Welcome, everyone. Whether you're prepping for a meeting, commuting, or you're just insanely curious about the tactical evolution of modern cricket, you're in the right place.
Absolutely.
Because today's focus is a really comprehensive analytical preview of the 2026 T20 World Cup Final. We are looking at a monumental deep dive into this clash between India and New Zealand.
It is a massive game.
It really is. And to do this properly, we're pulling together a wealth of global cricketing intelligence. I mean, we've got tactical breakdowns by Ashwin and Akash Chopra, candid commentary from former greats like Dale Steyn, Michael Clarke, Michael Vaughan, Shoaib Akhtar, plus we're synthesizing analytics from various international channels.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating matchup because it presents such a stark contrast in team-building philosophies.
Right.
We're stepping entirely away from the daily news cycle today. No loud, dramatic sports talk cliches. Today is about cutting through that noise to examine the specific mechanics, the granular matchups, and the underlying psychology that will actually decide who lifts that trophy.
And to set the stage for all of that, Darren Sammy recently offered a quote that I think perfectly captures the gravity of this final. He said, "If you want to win a World Cup, you have to beat India, because somewhere along the road, India are always there standing in the way."
Yeah, spot on.
It sets up our entire premise for today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can New Zealand's fearless, unstoppable momentum overcome India's battle-hardened, methodical depth?
That is the ultimate question. And I mean, to even begin answering it, we have to start with the environment. Because in cricket, the environment dictates the tactics entirely. This battle is taking place at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad.
The scale of this venue just cannot be overstated, with a capacity of 132,000 spectators.
It's unbelievable.
It's not just a crowd, it's an entire ecosystem that generates its own immense gravitational pull on the players. But obviously, the real focal point for you and us is the 22 yards out in the middle. The ground reports indicate that pitch number 3 has been kept under the tarpaulin, and it's reportedly a hybrid mixture of red and black soil.
That hybrid nature is going to make the toss incredibly interesting. Red soil, because of its clay content, typically offers true bounce.
Right, which stroke makers love.
Exactly. They absolutely love it because they can trust the trajectory. The ball comes onto the bat nicely. Black soil, on the other hand, absorbs and retains moisture very differently. It tends to keep the bounce low,
Meaning it can skid unexpectedly?
skidding unpredictably or holding up in the surface. So when you curate a pitch that mixes the two, you get a surface that keeps the contest completely open. It demands constant adaptability from the batters, and it offers just enough varied assistance to keep both pace and spin incredibly relevant throughout the 20 overs.
And then you throw the extreme temperature shifts into the mix. Ahmedabad is currently hitting around 35 degrees Celsius during the day, but that is plummeting to 19 degrees at night.
That is a severe drop.
With that drop, the dew factor becomes the ultimate wild card for the captain winning the toss. I mean, do you back your spinners to grip a wet ball in the second innings, or do you take the scoreboard pressure of batting first in a World Cup final?
It's a high-stakes chess match before a single ball is even bowled.
Mm.
The historical data at Ahmedabad suggests chasing is advantageous precisely because of that dew.
Yeah.
But the psychological weight of chasing a massive total in a final often overrides the physical advantage of a wet outfield. You really have to weigh the known conditions against the immense pressure of the occasion.
Let's look at how India earned their spot in this chess match, because their semifinal against England was nothing short of staggering. We're talking about an epic 499-run thriller where India defended 257 to win by a mere 7 runs.
Just an incredible game of cricket.
And that was despite an absolutely heroic 105 from England's 22-year-old Jacob Bethel.
That match was a masterclass in modern T20 captaincy, specifically highlighting Suryakumar Yadav's evolution as a leader. What stood out analytically was his sheer composure under relentless fire.
He didn't blink.
He didn't. When you're defending 257 and the opposition is actually keeping pace, hitting boundaries over after noise, the natural instinct for a captain is to panic. The traditional move is to scramble, change the field wildly, and throw the ball to a part-timer, hoping for a miracle breakthrough.
But he resisted that urge completely. He stuck to his primary weapons.
Exactly. He realized that under ultimate pressure, he had to trust his core of 5 frontline bowlers. He backed his main guys to execute their specific skills rather than rolling the dice on a 6th bowling option who might leak a catastrophic 20-run over.
That kind of tactical clarity and emotional control is precisely what navigates a team through a knockout match. And the execution from the batting unit to even get to 257 was phenomenal. The flexibility of India's lineup right now is creating massive headaches for opposition
Oh,
analysts.
massive headaches.
Take Tilak Varma. The way he moves seamlessly between batting positions 3 through 7 is a luxury most teams just don't have.
It really is.
He smashed 92 runs off 38 balls over his last 3 high-pressure games, essentially acting as a tactical floater who can provide instant, vital momentum wherever a partnership breaks.
And that kind of fluidity destroys pre-planned matchups. If an opposition captain is holding back a specific left-arm spinner to bowl to a right-hander in the 14th over, India just counters by sending Varma up the order to disrupt that exact plan.
He forces captains to constantly recalculate on the fly.
He does.
Speaking of disrupting plans, we have to talk about New Zealand peaking at exactly the right time. Their semifinal performance against a previously red-hot South African team was a brutal demolition.
Clinical.
Chasing down 169 with an astonishing 43 balls to spare is just surgical efficiency.
It was a clinical dismantling of a very good bowling attack.
Uh-oh.
And the undeniable spearhead of that demolition was Finn Allen. His form right now isn't just good, it's genuinely terrifying for opposition bowlers. He scored 100 not out off just 33 balls.
Shattering Chris Gale's record for the fastest men's T20 World Cup century, hitting 26s in the tournament. He's operating in a zone where predictive bowling models just fall apart.
They do. When a player enters that kind of flow state where they're picking up the length a fraction of a second earlier than everyone else, conventional bowling plans often go out the window.
Yeah.
You can't just bowl back of a length and hope he makes a mistake.
Right.
But the real danger of New Zealand isn't just Allen's explosive batting at the top, it's how quietly lethal their bowling consistency has been. Rachin Ravindra has stealthily become their leading wicket-taker with 11 scalps, tying up the middle overs.
While Lockie Ferguson and Matt Henry apply relentless pressure in the power play.
Exactly.
Now, the analysts are heavily divided on how to price this matchup. Dale Stein, looking at it purely from a structural and historical standpoint, gives New Zealand only a 1 or 2 out of 10 chance of pulling off the upset against this Indian side.
Yeah, he was quite definitive.
But Michael Clark assessed the landscape right after that semifinal demolition, and he's calling it a pure 50-50 coin toss.
The disparity in those predictions tells you everything about the volatile nature of this format. Stan is weighing India's immense depth, their spin quality, and their historical dominance in home conditions.
Which makes sense.
It does. But Clark is looking at the undeniable, unquantifiable momentum of a team that just chased a World Cup semi-final total in under 13 overs. Momentum like that can make a mockery of squad depth.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of how this game will be won or lost. Let's dive into the key tactical battles, starting right at the top in the power play. The matchup everyone is circling is Finn Allen against India's pace attack, but specifically, how he handles the left-arm spin of Axar Patel.
This is perhaps the most fascinating geometric battle of the entire match. Against South Africa, Finn Allen easily dispatched Keshav Maharaj. But Axar Patel presents a completely different physical challenge for a right-handed power hitter.
I was actually looking at Axar's pitch maps, and his release point is noticeably flatter and wider on the crease than someone like Maharaj. He uses that undercutter delivery heavily in the power play. Doesn't that skiddy trajectory naturally neutralize Allen's preferred back foot game?
It absolutely does. Instead of getting the ball to dip and loop above the batter's eye line, Axar fires it in flat. It skids off the pitch, and the natural angle from his wide release point brings the ball darting back into the right-hander's body.
Laid into the ribs.
Exactly. Finn Allen's entire power base relies on staying incredibly deep in his crease, waiting on the back foot, and unleashing a massive extended bat swing. Axar's skiddy angle physically cramps Allen for room. It targets his rib cage and perfectly limits his ability to extend his arms, essentially forcing him to play cramped, straight bat shots, rather than freeing his arms through the offside.
On the flip side of that power play battle, New Zealand's Matt Henry is going to be hunting for early breakthroughs against India's opening pair. Abhishek Sharma has clearly been struggling with his form and footwork, and Henry is arguably the worst possible bowler to face when you're lacking confidence.
Henry's mastery lies in his impeccable length. He pitches the ball right in that corridor of uncertainty and gets just enough subtle lateral movement off the seam to induce the outside edge. If Abhishek's feet are static, Henry will expose that immediately.
This is where Sanju Samson's role becomes absolutely critical. He's hit 16 sixes in his last 3 matches, including that vital 89 off 42 against England. He spent a lot of the tournament on the bench, but he brings a very calm, almost detached execution to high-pressure
He
situations.
does.
If he can manage the strike, use his depth in the crease to counter Henry's lengths, and proactively attack to take the pressure off Abhishek, it completely shifts the power play dynamic.
Samson's stillness at the crease is his greatest asset. He doesn't overcomplicate his trigger movements, which allows him to watch the ball incredibly closely. Against a seam bowler like Henry, having a still head and a stable base is the only way to consistently hit through the line of the moving ball.
Moving into the middle overs, the tactical battle shifts to the spinners against the big hitters. And we have to talk about the evolution of Shivam Dubé, who the analysts are now calling Shivam Dubé 2.0. His specific mechanic against spin the step hit is just a beautiful evolution of T20 batting.
It really is a departure from the textbook. In traditional cricket coaching, you're taught to get your front foot as close to the pitch of the ball as possible to smother the spin.
Right.
But Dubé uses his immense height and long levers to do the exact opposite.
When a spinner tosses the ball wide outside off stump, Dube doesn't step toward the pitch. He holds his ground, steps laterally into the empty space, and uses his full arm extension to launch the ball over long on or mid-wicket.
It's incredible to watch.
It forces the spinners to completely abandon those wide defensive lines. To keep him quiet, they have to bowl tight, front of the hand, skiddy deliveries directly into his body.
And New Zealand counters that specific middle-order threat with 34-year-old off-spinner Cole McConchie. He came into the squad as an injury replacement, but his tactical awareness is elite. McConchie's brilliance isn't in generating massive turn. It's entirely rooted in his subtle, deceptive pace variations.
He's constantly disrupting the batter's timing.
Precisely. He knows exactly how to jam left-handed batters by altering his speeds imperceptibly through the air. He'll push one through flat at 92 kilometers per hour, pinning the batter to the crease, and then pull the very next delivery back to 87 kilometers per hour with slightly more overspin.
That's tough to read.
This constant fluctuation in pace is a major threat to players like Ishan Kishan and Abhishek Sharma, whose entire game is built on finding a predictable rhythm.
Now, regarding India's middle over bowling, there's a significant tactical dilemma surrounding Varun Chakrabarti. The numbers from the semifinal are incredibly stark. He went for 64 runs in his 4 overs against England.
Yeah.
Michael Vaughan pointed out something fascinating in his analysis. He noted that Varun is currently bowling much too fast, frequently pushing over 100 kilometers per hour, and delivering the ball far too flat.
It's a mechanical issue that's costing him his primary weapon mystery. Vaughan astutely observed that without putting enough revolutions on the ball to make it grip and deviate off the surface, Varun is essentially operating as a slow seamer.
And on a good, true batting track, a slow seamer delivering the ball at 100 kilometers per hour without lateral movement is basically serving batting practice to international power hitters.
It really is.
Which raises a massive question for the Indian management. Do they stick with Varun, trusting him to drop his pace and rediscover his rhythm under the highest possible pressure? Or do they completely pivot and bring in the left arm wrist spin of Kuldeep Yadav for the final?
That is the big question.
Because Kuldeep offers flight, drift, and turn, which is the exact opposite of what Varun has been producing.
That single selection decision could easily define the middle overs. Kuldeep attacks the stumps and looks for wickets, whereas a struggling Varun can quickly become a liability if the batters line him up early.
But if the game survives the middle overs and goes down to the wire, we enter the domain of the death overs. And this brings us to the Jasprit Bumrah masterclass.
Oh, yes.
The way he operated in the 18th over against England was just breathtaking. England still had a very real pulse in that chase. Bumrah comes on, and his very first ball to Harry Brook, one of the most destructive finishers in the world, is a perfectly disguised, slower ball off-cutter. Brook was bluffed entirely and played completely over the top of it.
That sequence is the absolute pinnacle of fast bowling intellect. Bumrah earns the right to dictate those terms because his Yorker is so devastating. The batters are so terrified of getting their toes crushed by a 145 km/h Yorker that their weight naturally falls backward in anticipation.
They're bracing for impact.
Exactly. When Bumrah recognizes that fear, he rolls his fingers over the ball. The batter is too frozen, waiting for the Yorker to adjust to the lack of pace.
And then, just to prove he can, he followed up that slower ball by delivering pinpoint, unplayable Yorkers to trap Jacob Bethel and Sam Curran. He essentially shuts down the opposition's oxygen supply right when they need to breathe the most.
It's psychological domination as much as it is physical skill. And operating alongside Bumrah at the death is Hardik Pandya. This final represents a massive homecoming for Pandya at his former IPL home ground in Ahmedabad.
He knows this ground.
He knows the angles, the dimensions, and the wind patterns of this stadium intimately. Coming off a crucial 4-over spell against England, his ability to deliver clutch performances with both bat and ball could genuinely be the ultimate difference maker.
He definitely embraces the spotlight. But speaking of the psychological weight of the occasion, we have to look at the broader mental game. Shoaib Akhtar had some very pointed analysis on this, referring to the ghosts of Ahmedabad.
It's an undeniable, palpable factor. Akhtar correctly points out that India is not just playing the 11 cricketers from New Zealand. They are carrying the expectations of 1.5 billion people, and more specifically, they're carrying the haunting, localized trauma associated with this exact venue.
Right, because it was on this very turf at the Narendra Modi Stadium that India suffered that heartbreaking loss to Australia in the 2023 ODI World Cup Final. And they also dropped a Super 8 match to South Africa here earlier in this very tournament. That kind of history doesn't just vanish.
It compounds. Every time an Indian batter walks out to the middle or a bowler marks their run-up, they are fighting the opponent, the occasion, and the heavy history of that specific stadium.
It's a lot to carry.
Akhtar's tactical point is that if New Zealand can put up a massive total in the first innings or take 2 or 3 wickets early in the power play, the pressure of the silent crowd and the ghosts of those past defeats will compound exponentially for the Indian players. It makes the bat feel heavier and the boundaries look much larger.
And you contrast that immense crushing scrutiny with the New Zealand mindset. They operate this incredibly dangerous nothing-to-lose mentality. They are the perennial overachievers who have suddenly caught fire, while India faces the undisputed burden of being the powerhouse of world cricket, where anything less than a trophy is deemed a failure.
It's a classic psychological mismatch. New Zealand can swing freely. They know a loss is somewhat expected by the broader global narrative, but a win elevates them to legendary status.
Yeah.
For India, a win is merely a relief from the pressure. A loss is treated as a national catastrophe. That uneven distribution of burden dictates micro-decisions on the field. It influences shot selection, conservative field placements, and defensive bowling changes when things get tight.
So synthesizing all of this tactical and psychological analysis, we have a truly fascinating clash of styles. On one side, we have India's methodical, battle-tested depth. They possess the structural flexibility to survive top-order collapses, the spin variations to control the middle phases, and the unparalleled genius of Jasprit Bumrah to close out the death overs.
And on the other side, we have New Zealand's fearless, explosive peak. They are armed with batters like Finn Allen, who are currently redefining the geometry of the cricket field, supported by a bowling attack that quietly and ruthlessly strangles the opposition's scoring rate.
It really does feel exactly like that 50-50 coin toss Michael Clark described. But, looking at what Finn Allen did to South Africa, scoring 100 off 33 balls and completely dismantling a world-class attack in less than 6 overs, it makes you wonder about the fundamental nature of this format.
I see.
Well, in the modern game, where athletes are stronger, the bats are essentially weapons and the boundaries are constantly cleared, does long-term tournament consistency still matter? Or has T20 evolved to a terrifying point where a single 30-ball window of individual brilliance can render months of meticulous team preparation entirely obsolete?
It's the existential crisis of modern T20 coaching. You can spend years building squad depth, analyzing matchups, and perfecting your structures, and it can all be undone in 20 minutes of pure, unadulterated ball striking by one player who just happens to find their ultimate zone.
It guarantees an unforgettable final, that's for sure. We've laid out the mechanics, the pitch conditions, the key matchups, and the heavy psychological stakes. Now, the question goes over to you.
We want to hear from you.
Based on the tactical breakdowns we've discussed today in this deep dive, who do you see lifting the trophy? Do the ghosts of Ahmedabad return to haunt the hosts, or does India's depth and tactical execution finally conquer the venue? Analyze the matchups, weigh the pressure, and let us know your prediction for the final. Enjoy the match, everyone.